Welcome to People Power. This is the 2026 edition. I think we're in our third or fourth year now, and it is my favourite webinar event of the year. I'm not sure many people have a favourite webinar event of the year, but I do, and this is it. Um, we've got a jam-packed morning ahead of us, which hopefully you'll find interesting, and hopefully you'll also find it valuable, and you'll leave the day with um, nice ideas of things that you can take back to your schools and to your trusts to move forward. We're already into session one territory, but just before we kick off with the first session, which is around attracting talent, I thought I would briefly run through the kind of overall plan for today. So I'm going to be kind of chairing our day. My name is Iona, and I'm managing director at Ajurio. I'm joined by lots of my colleagues from within Ajurio, and also lots of brilliant people from both trusts in across England, and other people working on people in trusts in England. So lots of good speakers, lots of expertise in the room today, and hopefully a very good session. We're going to start today with a session on attracting staff, which is the one that we're going to kick off in just a second. Then at 10:30 in an hour's time, we're going to be looking at engaging staff. So making sure that feedback that staff are brought on the journey with us, and that feedback they give us is able to be turned into real change. Then we're going to have a break for not quite lunch because it's going to be at 11:30, but a break for brunch or whatever you need to do in the middle. We'll have a half hour break at 11:30. Then when we get to midday, we're going to have a session on developing staff, thinking about career progression. And we've got loads of people on that call talking about kind of the theory of it, and the sort of big picture practice. But also lots of practitioners who will be talking about how they've done it within their trust as well. And then we'll finish the day at one o'clock until two, where we talk about retention, and particularly the notion of belonging and the relationship between how well staff feel that they belong in their organisation, and the sort of impact that has on belonging. So it's a jam-packed day. If you stay with us for all four of those sessions, fabulous. If you're just here for one, also completely fine. We will be sharing the recordings of all four with everybody who has signed up. So yes, thank you very much for joining us. And with that, I think we can kick off. So Ben, if you go to the next slide. So this is today's first session. There we go. This is today's first session, and it is about attracting staff. So, as I said, you've got me, who is managing director at Jurio. We've got Ben, we've got Claire, and we've got Helen. I'm going to pause very briefly and ask everybody to do a quick intro to themselves. So, starting from left to right, Ben, do you want to give a quick hello and tell us who you are?
Hi, yeah, I'm Ben, and I'm the insights lead at Ajurio, and I'll be chatting through some of the really interesting data that we've got within this session and throughout the day. So you'll see me a couple more times today.
Thank you. And Claire?
Hi there, I am the Director of People and I work in Greenheart Learning Partnership, which is a 10 primary school MAT in the West Midlands.
Thank you. And Helen?
Hi everybody, I'm Helen Kitchen. I am a communications specialist working with Talent Architects, whose mission is to make places great places, schools great places to work. We have worked with around 100 trusts around England, and I'm going to be sharing some examples of great attraction tactics and also some best practice strategy.
Fabulous. And how the kind of structure of the session is going to go. So Ben and I with the Ajurio, we're going to start really zoomed out, tell you a little bit about the national picture of kind of what the employer value proposition for the sector looks like, what it is that people really like about their time working in schools, and what are the things that are driving them away. And then we'll zoom in a little bit into Helen's got some slides for us on what the good practice looks like that Talent Architects work with across the trust that they work with, and then we're going to zoom in and go into real detail into a specific case study. So Claire is going to tell us about what things are like at Greenheart and how the kind of process of attracting and retaining staff looks like for that trust. So before I hand over to Ben to talk about the data, I've got two questions for everybody. First of all, if you can start by thinking back either on the most recent or the most positive hiring process that you've been a part of. So when you were the candidate, have a think about what it was that was so good about your experience, what it was that made you kind of go through that process and think, yes, this organization is one that I can align with, this organization is one that I would like to work with. So that's the first part of your thinking. And then the next part, click your button, Ben. There we go. The next part is I now want you to apply that to your current trust hiring process. So it might be that the first answer that you were thinking about is also about the trust that you currently work for. When you went through the process, what was it about it that was so great? And how does that look now? If it was somewhere else that you were thinking about when we thought about our most positive hiring process, what have you learned from there that's not currently visible within your trust hiring process, and what are the things that are still there that are sort of real positives that you can draw from? So have that in the back of your mind as we go through the next three speakers, and we'll think about ways to leave the session with something in the second part more closely resembling the most positive process that we can imagine. All righty. Ben, do you want to talk us through the big picture?
Yeah, thanks. So I'll start off by just sharing this table that highlights some of the staff experience at the moment. So this is what we published in our staff experience report at the end of last academic year, highlighting the kind of like the changes since the previous year. So what we can see is that of the staff experience, 13 topics in total, 6 of them have improved, but worsened topics included pay and benefits, staff support and relationships, and career opportunities. So when we look at this from an overall picture, we can see that there are some green shoots within the staff experience, but there are also things that we can continue to work on and improve. But there are areas that we do see worsening results that need some attention and some focus on when we're looking at the overall staff experience within our schools and trusts. So when we look at the reasons why staff have considered resigning, so we can see that the top 5 or 6 reasons within the list of why people are considering resigning aren't reasons that are out of the trust control. They're often reasons that are within the trust control, such as culture or workplace challenges, where towards the end of that list, the bottom of the list, we see things that are more kind of like set in stone or fixed reasons. So we can see like physical health reasons, relocation to different areas, retirement, depression, wrong. Those are right at the bottom. Thankfully, we only see 2% of the staff workforce saying that the profession is wrong for them. So there are so many more reasons above them of things we can do to keep staff within their roles, and reasons why staff leave. And a lot of those ones at the top end are things, like I said, that are within the trust's control, such as culture and workplace reasons. When we have a look at what factors influence the decision to remain in their current position, we can see that support from colleagues is a massive one, and the reason why staff are most likely to remain in their role is from staff supporting colleagues, passion for the profession, feeling valued, supportive line manager, financial stability, supportive leadership, positive work balance. So those reasons at the top are reasons when we are advertising roles or when we are advertising positions that are open within our organizations, that we can really shout about what is valued within our current organization. Why are people remaining in their role? What do people love about the time that they work within that organization? If you were to do this on your own organizational level, you would find the reasons why staff specifically within your organizations are being influenced to remain in their current position. So what factors are the key things that keep people in their roles? Those are your unique selling points as organizations that you can put out there and share with the communities within those role adverts or within your employer branding. But one employer brand won't land equally with every role. So within the data that I'll share in a minute, we'll see the stark differences between the individual roles within a school organisation. So it's very much about how we can tailor those approaches when we are doing things like recruitment application posts or job postings. Those are the things that we need to tailor to identify and to encourage those within those different roles to show that we understand the what they are looking for and what they value within the current positions that they're going for. So in our staff experience report, we broke that down by the main roles within the organisation. What we saw is that teachers remain the least positive, but the gap is narrowing. So what we can see there versus the all staff benchmark, teachers are generally the less positive than the overall staff body. We can see that they feel more overworked, that they often feel stressed, they are less likely to feel excited by their work they do. But what we do see is that there is an improvement versus last year for all of these things, apart from the feeling stress. That one has remained the same, but the others we have seen marginal improvements versus the previous year's experiences. So it's about understanding those individual roles and what that picture looks like for each of those, to understand the picture of what is going to be valued for them when we're doing things like our employee branding and how that sits with those roles. For middle leaders, middle leaders struggle, particularly with workload and the stress levels and their overall well-being. Those are elements where they are considerably less positive compared to their peers within the workplace. But we do actually find is that they are more likely to feel excited by their work they do, and they are more likely to feel appreciated by the leadership for the work that they do. We do see areas of improvement versus last year as well for this one. And the general trend is that the experience is improving for middle leaders. Senior leaders, we can see there versus the all staff benchmark, considerably more positive versus that overall staff workforce, apart from feeling overworked. We find that senior leaders are more likely to report that they are overworked, and that there's an improvement versus last year, though, on all of those questions, where the senior leaders are continuing to get more positive versus last year, and that gap is widening of how positive senior leaders are compared to the rest of the staff body. We can see that they are considerably more likely to report feeling excited by the work that they do. And by asking those other questions about why they're likely to remain in their roles or why they would consider roles, we can understand that in a bit more reason what it is about those positions that we do they do really value about their current employer and where they work. There's limited change for TA since last year. We can see that versus the last year, there's one of those factors that we highlighted that has got a positive improvement, and we see one that's got a negative change, which is the well-being question. So only 38% of TAs report feeling very well or quite well, physically or mentally. That is also less than the all staff benchmark, so the rest of their peers. But we do see that TAs are less likely to report feeling overworked, and they are less likely to report feeling stressed lately compared to their peers. Admin staff are the least likely to feel excited by their work. So we see that they're 14% less likely to, compared to the rest of their peers, to report feeling excited by their work they do, with less than half of them reporting that they very often or quite often feel excited. We do see that this role, there is more of a negative trend in terms of compared to previous years with two of those factors that we see that correlate strongly with risk of resignation. We see that they are a lot more likely to feel stressed than they were last year, and they're less likely to report feeling appreciated by leadership for the work that they do within those roles. So how can you use that data when it comes to the employer brand? Using genuine staff survey data in a recruitment process really does highlight that honesty and that element of external reputation. So sharing positive survey metrics can enhance the external facing reputation, making it seem more attractive to prospective candidates. So by sharing some of these headlines that we highlight below there, with like 80% of staff feel respected by their colleagues, 88% of staff feel comfortable asking colleagues for help when they need it, 75% of staff would recommend this workplace as a good place to work, or you could even highlight that 70% of staff say that it's easy to take time off to care for life admin, personal appointments. So if you found that within the reasons why people stay within their role is that you're highlighting that they really value the flexible working, you could put within your job postings that last point, for example, they're saying that the reasons why staff feel that way. You've got that they find it easier to take time off with life admin and personnel. We know that people within those roles generally value that as a thing. So let's put that within our posts, how that works within our organization, and sharing that genuine data really does help to hit home that you understand the needs of those that you're employing and what they value within their roles. It also proves that authenticity. It's not just those we say it, it's that we also see that within our data. It's not just, oh, these are things that we think people want to hear within these job adverts. We can see this within our data. These are actual points of data from people we have within our organization about what they say they value about working for us and what they say that they value about remaining in their role. So it also showcases that culture of care. So by sharing those data points and those genuine survey points, it can really help to show that you understand the staff experience within your organization, and can help to show that you care about those within your organization, and that there's a general culture that they can buy into, and they can become a part of that wider culture of care within your organization. And yeah, that final point there about signaling that legitimate partnership, I've kind of touched on that with those other points when I've talked through this slide, that it does help to show that as an employer, you're in tune with your staff and your workforce, understanding why they remain in their roles and what is the real benefits that the staff see to working within those organizations. So I think now's the chance to hand over to Helen. Helen, would you like to share the slides, or do you want me to share the slides for you?
Would it be easier if you just kept the control? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, just give me a nod and I'll hand over to the next slide every time we need it.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben. And that was a really great lead into what I'm going to talk about. Using the data and using those, the real story about what's going on within your school is such an important thing to do, spotlighting your culture and making sure you talk about it. But and if I give you a little bit of context about me, Talent Architects was founded by a colleague, Mandy Coulter, who focuses on people strategy. And she was finding, and I come from the world of comms and PR, and I've been working with Mandy for a couple of years now. And the reason that HR and comms work so well together is I've just looked at a poster that I have on my wall, which is a really famous quote, talking about, it's not just about doing the right thing, which is what all the data is showing that you're doing, that Ben shared, but it's telling people that you're doing the right thing, which is the comms side of things that really brings everything to life. So if we can click through to the next slide, Ben, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how you stand out from the crowd as an employer. And every school, every trust has its own story. And I think it's really important that things like the survey data and the experience and culture of working in your school is really brought to life. And I think it was, just scribbled down the number one reason that you have for people staying in jobs through the survey is support from colleagues. And if we just click through to the next one, make your culture visible. I think the fact that colleagues play such an important role in people's decision to stay is very indicative of a culture. And so if you have that great story to tell, not just through the data. And this is where I'm going to go back into a bit of a time warp here, because I've got on here, Bananarama on here from the 80s, if any of you are old enough to remember them. And I'm also thinking about Madness, One Step Beyond, because I'm going to ask you to consider going one step beyond the data and looking at the stories behind the data that really bring that data to life. So in terms of attraction, oh no, can we stick on that one a little bit? Thank you. So in terms of what do we need to do and how do we bring some kind of structure to our attraction practices? And I like to use this Bananarama song as my framework. It's really memorable. It's easy to remember, and it's the song that says it. It isn't what you do, it's the way that you do it. It's the time that you do it, and it's the place that you do it. And that's what gets results. And those are the three key pillars or elements in the framework that we bring into schools and trusts that we're working with. And we ask them to think about this. And if we click forward now onto the way, onto the next slide, please, Ben, sorry. Thank you. It's stories about how your people feel. So those stories about how those colleagues are making each other feel. So it's the way you start bringing your culture to life and talking about those messages. And we all know when you're looking for something to do or a restaurant to go to, it's not the restaurant necessarily that puts its menu out there or says, we've got this great chef, or we're open 9 to 5. More and more people are looking for those peer reviews, Trustpilot, those kinds of things. They're looking for stories of other people's experience, and those are the things that they trust, those third-party testimonials. So I think we always encourage our schools and trusts to think about bringing that data to life. So if all of your team are staying because of the support from colleagues, show an example of that, tell the story of that. And I've put on the slide here just a couple of social media posts which show teachers talking about their experience working for specific schools. You often see these on websites, you see them on social media, and increasingly you see them in job packs. And I think it's a really powerful way to get those colleagues to sell your school and your trust for you. So I think that's the first part of way. And when you go into a school, or we find when we go into a school and say, right, you need to go and find those stories, a lot of the time we get either blank faces, or you can see people physically go, I haven't got the time to do things like that. We know the stories are out there, but how do we collect them? Sorry, yes, Ben, click forward. Sorry. So one of the things that we've been doing recently is with one of the trusts that we're working with, is we've come up with sort of their personalized Bananarama toolkit. It's their employer brand toolkit. And we've worked very closely with them to identify all the data, such as Ben's shown. So why people are staying, why people are leaving. And we've identified key themes. And this is a very common approach in marketing, I'm sure you're aware. We've identified key themes about why people stay, whether or not it's well-being, whether or not it's the financial support and security of a job, whether or not it's the career progression and the pathways, all those different elements. And we've created 4 key pillars, 4 key messages that we can build all our stories around, along topics that we know prospective candidates, but also existing staff regard as very important. So we've kept 4 key themes, and we've asked them to really think about what they're talking about in relation to the themes. And while the trusts are at the top level of so they belong to the trust, what we're encouraging the schools to do is look at how those pillars are lived in their particular setting, so that we can bring that unique school culture in the context of the main pillars. And again, overwhelm, oh my goodness, how do we do this? We've found a way to create to give every school an extra pair of hands in terms of the comms and the recruitment side of things when they're talking about what it's like to work for their organisation. So we've created an AI assistant that has already been trained on all of the pillars. It has some idea about each of the school settings and the unique nature of how things work in each school. And it's working side by side with people on recruitment job ads, but also general content, which is focused less on pupil experience and more on staff experience, so that we can really get that, what it's like to work here, message out across lots of different platforms. I hope that's kind of beginning to make sense. What we found is, like Ben's saying, using data, using real personal experiences and putting those into the AI assistant, it can look at all of the information and output content which is aligned with the pillars, but also has that, I call it, school sparkle. So it shows how, if you're looking at wellbeing policies, how that's really lived in an individual setting. And those are really powerful, authentic stories, which do all of the things that Ben's last slide were talking about, but they do it really quickly. And we've got really positive feedback from all the schools who've begun to start using this. So click on to the next one. So that's the way that you do it. So that's all about human storytelling, but giving it local sparkle and giving it themes so that it resonates with the reasons that people want to go and work for a company. So the second thing, it ain't what you do, it's the time that you do it. And again, when we go into schools, a lot of them, when there's a vacancy, they'll start promoting the vacancy, they'll start talking about the need for a vacancy. And in my world, we know that if you switch your marketing on and off, it's really difficult for you to stay at the top of people's minds. So we think it's really, really important, and we try to stress this, that people consider talking about their staff experience throughout the year. Whether or not they're doing that on their website, whether or not they're doing that with media or on social media. But we think that building your talent pool is a really important way to help your recruitment, so that you're not always dependent on these expensive third party, advertising platforms where we know people are looking, but actually if we've already built our employer brand and people know about us, that they may well be coming to our website, or they might have already registered with our talent pool. And the thing that we stress is try and find, build a calendar. So build out all of your themes across the whole of the year, so that you know that you'll be looking to promote a story about teaching assistants, well in advance of the time when you might suddenly be recruiting teaching assistants. And we also know that at the trust that we're working with, quite a lot of the time it's the support and the professional staff that they're struggling to recruit. And there's not necessarily the same cycle of when people hand the notice in and when they're looking to start a new job. So it's really important that you have that monthly external communication talking about why you're a great employer, whether or not you do that on the back of some of the themes. So I've got here, continuous professional development, the training's open, it's Thank a Teacher Day, whether or not it's, the results of another student survey. Keep talking about what it's like to work at your school across the full year. So always on, human stories, and the final one on the next slide, please, Ben, is the place. And I sort of already kind of talked about this. A lot of people are using my new term. A lot of people use TES when they're recruiting. There are local recruitment job boards. I think one of the most staggering things that I learned when I first started working in the sector is most of a school staff will live within a 10-mile radius of that particular school. And so and you're all fantastic community hubs for all sorts of different reasons. If your school setting is used for after school clubs or things that are nothing to do with school, and you've got community coming in, which we found with some of the trusts that we're working with, there's a whole community network that you can use over and above the recruitment channels that we all know and love. So as well as your own website, your own job ads and packs, newsletters to parents, suppliers, partners, the media, think about the community channels that you could also tap into. I think one of the trusts or the schools we were working for, they had a sports facility which all kinds of sports teams came to, and they had a notice board there. Great place to put a job advert. So think very carefully about all of the channels and the places where you can talk about what it's like to work for you, and make sure you've got consistent messaging across them all, so that when somebody sees an advert in a newsletter, they remember, oh yes, I've seen that on social media as well. So it's just about that kind of consistent, visible, thinking about a little bit outside the box about where you can place your adverts. So I think that was a really quick session. I hope you got some value from it. But if you remember nothing else, remember it's the way that you do it. Human stories. It's the time that you do it. Keep that consistent flow of information, and it's the place that you do it. Make sure you're thinking about all the possible channels and platforms that you can use to ensure that you attract the best talent.
Thanks so much, Helen. I am wondering at what point in the week that song will go out of my head. But I'm looking forward to enjoying that for the foreseeable future. Really good stuff. Claire, I think we can zoom in now further and go and look precisely at Greenheart's journey. So Claire, you've been working with Greenheart for some time. Do you want to give us a bit of background around kind of how long you've been at the trust and what your role looks like, and anything on the kind of journey that you've been on within the trust to strengthen your employee recruitment approach?
Well, I joined the partnership about 6 years ago, and I joined as a training development person, but my role grew and changed as the business need grows and change, which I think is probably the same as everybody. But very early on, we founded Juryo at one of the trade shows that you tend to go to, and we realised that we really had a need across so many members of staff to really gain an understanding of who they were. And I suppose the context of this before we met at Juryo was that we did have a higher turnover rate, we did have vacancies, and we needed to better understand our staff. And yes, our head teachers could tell us those stories and tell us some of it, but we wanted to really know and to be able to filter and delve and get to really the crux of the matter and really take into account of what's going on here, why have we got these vacancies, and what can we do to plug these vacancies and to stop them. So our values, in actual point of fact, and our core mission, they haven't changed since I joined the partnership. They've remained absolutely the same. What has changed, I suppose, is the story. And I suppose through using Juryo, we were able to recognise and fully understand what it is that our staff were saying. Well, hang on a minute, this is really great, but we're not so sure about this. or we need to tell you this. So, for instance, workload, when we benchmark that and we look at that through Edurio, you'll not be surprised to realise that it's the same as everybody else. We're not a million miles away and we can't do much about it. We do absolutely what we can, but we talk very openly and transparently to our staff and our teams about, you've raised this as an issue, we recognise it. Let's see if there's anything we can do to try and amend it. What are your thoughts? What are your ideas? And move forward from that. So they have an understanding that we feel it, we understand it, and we are where we can trying to do something about it. So there are useful things, but that in itself suggests to me that, and you can tell from how I'm saying it, that we don't just use Edurio. Edurio is at the top of the pile as our data and a lens through which we can look at things, different groups of people, different areas, different schools, etc., etc. So we can slice that data up. But actually, and we've heard today the importance of stories and people telling the stories. And one of the things that we like to do is use the Edurio survey to go back to our staff and talk to them. So we also have Termly Staff Forum, and that's a way of triangulating the data and saying, well, we picked this up, but can you tell me more about? We can see this as a trend here, but it's the only school where this is a trend, and that's really interesting. Can you tell us more? And our staff will. Obviously, that's not happened overnight. That's been quite a journey to get people to trust the systems we provide them with. So one of the common questions with Edurio is, well, is it really anonymous? Is it truly anonymous? Will somebody find out that it's me who said this? And it is truly anonymous, unless through a comment somebody really gives themselves away by signing with their name. It's quite difficult to say who said what when over such a large group of staff. And I'm sure if you're not familiar with the platform, others on the platform will share that. But it's really important that people feel safe to say that what they need to and what they want to. So that's really important. The other important thing we found in terms of that anonymous kind of platform area was that it was better if we, as the central team, me as one of the directors, sent out the survey and it didn't come from the heads. It made staff feel safer that it really was quite an anonymous survey. So it's really quite interesting about listening to staff and how they want to use a platform and if they will use the platform. So the reason we took on Edurio then was clearly we want to know more about our staff. The secondary point was we need to know how we can close these gaps in terms of our recruitment and how we can best attract our staff. So that was our starting point. And I have to tell you, it's made a huge difference because in terms of turnover, it's really low. Currently, and I should touch wood, shouldn't I? Currently, we have no major vacancies that are sitting there as a worry. So we're doing really well because we're listening to our staff. Now, you've heard lots of thoughts this morning about the story and being personal stories, and that's really important to us. So we do let that story come out, and it's not the senior staff who are telling the story. So throughout this process, it is our staff who tell the story. So if I give you an example about our recruitment process, and it's nothing that you wouldn't expect, it really isn't. It's the most normal process in the world, but it's about who does the talking, I think. So obviously we start with the advert, and Helen, absolutely right, Bananarama all the way, because it is absolutely about when you place the advert, where you place the advert, and understanding this group of people are going to be best attracted through placing my advert here, here, or here. But again, it's about understanding your teams and where they work, who they talk to, and the power of your own community. So that's been really important. But we're also very open about as well looking beyond our communities. So we really do think very carefully about which platforms we use and how we do it. However, what we also have is that first point of contact is the point of contact, so it doesn't change. And we think about that contact point within an advert very carefully because not everybody has the time to invest in that first phone call. And that's absolutely so crucial. It's the most important call you have because you're listening to them, obviously, but they're also learning a lot about you. So it's the first call. The first calls always take me quite a lot of time because, yes, I'm a talker, but also I want to learn as much as I possibly can and see if they're a best fit and not waste anybody's time. So the second part is obviously the visit. Spend a lot of time with visits, and I try and do them one-to-one. And where possible, I attend the visit as well. So again, if I've been that point of contact in the telephone call, then I'm the person of contact who organises the visits and takes that visit through its natural completion. When I'm at school, though, and the visits are taking place, I'm just at the back, very quiet, which is quite unusual for me, I must say. But I am at the back, and I let the head teacher, the teachers, the TAs, the children do the talking, everybody else apart from me. And sometimes, obviously, you know, if I feel something's important, yes, I'll say, oh, could you tell them about this story? Could you tell them about that? Can you tell them about when you did? And I think those are important. And, you know, Helen talked again about the story and those personal stories that people forget because they think it's normal, you know, and they don't raise them. And I'm kind of sitting there, almost like the conductor, I suppose, of the orchestra, actually saying, hang on a second, what you do for these children is amazing. Have you seen the shed in the corner of the playground? That's our community shed where people can come and buy and do and whatever, you know? So we've got all these wonderful things going on, but sometimes you have to remind people that these wonderful things are happening because they are unusually wonderful things. So that's really important. So the visits I also do one-to-one wherever possible, because I think that's important, because otherwise people don't get the chance to ask the questions they want to ask and us to learn about them as much as the other way around and to find where they fit. And I think that fit is really important. So it is about relationships, but it's also what Ben said there, using that survey to actually say, well, 80% of our staff think this. This is how we manage our survey. So that's really important in the kind of the route through, I suppose. So it is about letting staff and children telling their own story. So what have we done and how have we got there? It's been quite a long journey. It really has. It's been a long journey because initially we had our baseline results from Edurio and we didn't have those staff for them. We didn't realise we needed them in that way. Okay. But having had the Edurio platform, it's like, well, great. So how do we play this back now? How do we use it? How do we make good use of it? So that was one thing that we changed. But also, we've really asked head teachers, particularly this year more than ever, to make sure they plan for change. So we use this staff survey. We do it in March, and it's obviously 12 months before they do it again. So it's this annual survey, but it's what's happening in between that's important. And on the Edurio platform, our heads can now access lots of different surveys, pulse surveys and so forth, which is great. But if they're not careful, it can also be scattergun. So what I've asked all head teachers to absolutely do, particularly this year, to close the gaps even further, is to really take account of what is it that the Edurio survey is telling them they need to improve, or what's their greatest risk. And I think that's really important, thinking about staff voice. What are the problems we're being told about, and what are you going to do about them? Now, what I haven't asked this year is for a separate action plan, because I think we're awash with action plans. And if we're not careful, we can just wallpaper our classrooms with them, can't we? But I think what I've done this year is I've asked them actually to thread their actions and their plans through their SEFs, through their school improvement plans, because we know our staff are our biggest asset. And if our staff are happy and they're good at what they're doing and they're valued and they're listened to, then the impact will be seen on our children as well. So it's about school improvement through our staff as well. So there's a strand now that runs through our school development plans that's really pushing the idea of this is what we know and this is where we want to go and this is how I'm going to get there. And every school within our partnership will have their own peaks and troughs across the survey. And so they will have their own sort of ideas about what they need to do and how they will do it, because every school environment is also different across our partnership and they're all unique. So they really need to think about that. So they're threading it through their school development plans. They're really thinking about that because obviously it's important to Ofsted, isn't it? That leadership capacity is really important. And that's where it also helps us as well. So I think the other key thing to say now is about you've got to identify who is driving this. Because if you're not careful, what happens? You do a survey in March and you celebrate its outcomes, and then you don't do anything until the next March. You think, oh gosh, we've got 3 weeks to do a survey. Come on, chaps, what have we done? It's too late. It's too late. It must be ongoing, just like Helen was talking about with the the communication. It's got to be consistent and throughout the year. But it's also got to have a driver, and it's got to have a senior leader. If you're part of a trust, I would suggest somebody, like me, sits centrally and has that oversight across all of the schools. But the head's also got to lead it as well from within the school. And that's absolutely critical. The points I think that are really important and we've seen make a difference are really about improving the transparency and feedback to staff. No point doing a survey if they can't see it's had any point, and people will stop filling in the survey. So increasing your engagement levels with your teams is absolutely critical, and finding a way to do that's really important. And again, when you're doing the survey, it's about when you're asking people to do the survey, what point of year, why are you asking it then, what will it do, what will the impact be? So it's really important about when you time these things. So that and transparency in the feedback's important, but also important, obviously, to your leadership culture, which obviously links into Ofsted as well, doesn't it? The other thing that I've done is we're using it to really look at emerging risks as well. So almost using the Ajurio survey as a risk register so that we can hear where there are concerns actually raised by members of staff. So almost like a risk register, which is quite possibly a slightly different approach to it, but that's the aim this year, that's what I want to do, so that we can demonstrate we know our schools well and we take action. And that's the important bit, isn't it? That we actually take action. The other things that we want to do as well is strengthen our governance and the oversight that the trustees in our case must have about staff experience. And that's really important to us too. So by the end of this academic year, all those voices that we hear through the survey, through our forum, through our other mechanisms are actually played back to trustees, and they can be reassured and assured that, we have a QA process here, that we absolutely know where our staff are at their happiest and why they're happy and why we've now got good retention rates and what's actually happening in that effect. So that sort of looks at quite a few things. The challenges, I think, for us have been engagement. I've said at the top of my session, really, that it's people trusting that it is anonymous. It's growing that trust. It's trusting that people should be able to say how they feel in a professional way, in a professional space, and actually make things better because of it. But that's quite a challenge. It's quite tricky sometimes to get staff to understand that and to work with that and to trust in that. So there's a big thing here about relationship and trust. I think in terms of if I were doing it for the first time, and it's those first 3 months, what are you going to do? You've got 90 days, off you go. We bought this wonderful resource. What are you going to do with it? I say plan, and then plan again. Okay. So it is about working out who's going to drive this forward and why. What is the objective? Why are you buying into this survey? Why do you want to know about staff voice? What do you want to do with it? Because then you get the right questions and then you can do something with the results. I think the other thing that I would say is share it. Share with your staff the reasons why you have bought into, the reasons why you're doing surveys, the reasons why you're interested in staff voice. Be open, be transparent from the beginning. This is not about catching people out. This is about making us better together. So I think absolutely share that. I think if you share the purpose and you are authentic in that and you really genuinely want to know more, then sharing that purpose means that you'll get higher engagement levels. And what you really need is the high engagement, because the higher engagement means that obviously your data is more robust and you can tell a better story. But then you can get to the crux of the matter over a great number of people. So it's really, really helpful. Okay, so think about those engagement, the number of people you've got, and then action plan from it. Okay, you've got your result, you've got your report. So what are you going to do with it now? Don't leave it to those last sort of 3 weeks before you do something with those surveys. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. That's kind of our approach. And I hope that's helped. I don't know if you've got any further questions. I don't know if I've covered everything that you want me to have covered, but is that helpful?
I think that was really interesting. Thank you, Claire. And I think what's good about this is the kind of two sides to what we're doing around our kind of employer branding. There's knowing where we are, so gathering those stories, and then being able to say, okay, so this proportion of our staff feel this way. we've got the data at the sort of higher level, but then we've also got the individual stories and the sort of, as you said, pointing out the community shared and the sort of the sort of specifics and the detail that sort of tells the story in high definition versus this kind of slightly more zoomed out image. And I think being able to tell that story of where we are. But what I love about your story is that you've also said, okay, and now because we know from the forums and from the engagement that we're doing with our staff, because we know these are the areas where we might want to improve things. This is the bit of our employer branding. This is a bit of our story that we're not happy with. We want this time next year to be telling the story that includes these problems being solved and so on. And I think that having that kind of dual-pronged approach is yeah, just really is really nice. You're working with what you're working with, and that's what you're putting out to when you're trying to attract new staff. You're not kind of embellishing. You're not saying we have sort of 100% of our staff are always jumping out of bed in the morning because they can't wait to get here. But you're also saying this is kind of where we are and this is what we're working on. And I think going back to Ben's final slide on that sort of authenticity and that sort of sense that it's a partnership, being able to sort of show that you mentioned about showing it to the trustees, but also to the kind of the community around you, saying that this is the truth of who we are, and being able to back that up with those individual stories, with that kind of what you're showing them on the visits and stuff, I think is really wonderful. You mentioned Ajurio a lot, and thank you for doing so. I'm interested for those who are on the line, are there other tools that you have found really valuable in the recruitment process? Claire, sorry, Claire, that was a question to you.
Sorry, I thought it was to the wider group. Okay.
I realised as when you moved yourself, I replayed what I said and I realised that was ambiguous. Yeah, other tools that you found really valuable.
I mean, to be honest with you, in terms of recruitment, I think the tools that you use, or the statements, how you use the tool is important. So I really go back each time to it's about relationships. All the survey data tells us that. It's always about relationships. It's always about talking and listening in equal measure. It's about understanding who do we want to attract, where can we attract them from? So yes, we use My New Term. Yes, we use tests. Yes, we use local boards. Yes, we use our community platforms. We do all of those, but it does depend on when, why, and who, we're trying to recruit. So we're really thoughtful about it, and we don't just do it all the time. We're very thoughtful about who do we want to attract, and we're not scared either about reaching out to recruitment agencies as well and working with them where it shows that that's actually the best option right now, because that's what we need to do. So we're always very open-minded, and I think that is critical as well, that where you need help and expert advice, well, you go and look for that. We're not all brilliant at everything all of the time, are we? So it's about using those external voices and going to different places at different times, say, right, okay, this is where we are. How can we improve what we're doing? We've still got obviously lots of things to do, but I think the other important thing is as well, for us, we have 10 schools over quite a wide geographical span, and all of our schools are actually very different. And I think it's allowing those individual schools to share their voice too. And that's critical, because what we have found is that it's not necessarily that people want to work for Greenheart, they want to work with a particular school. And that's really important. And I think Greenheart comes second. The school will always and should always come first. And then the organisation comes second. So that's kind of where we are.
That's wonderful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think, as you say, it's not necessarily the tool, it's how you use it. And I do think, like, obviously this is a day that's run by Ajurio, but the kind of we're not kind of here trying to sort of hard sell to you. Should anyone who's not worked with Ajurio must come and work with us. The thinking around voice and the thinking around engaging with your staff is it doesn't matter I mean, we want you to be doing a good job at listening to your staff, but this could be done for free with a kind of SurveyMonkey or a Microsoft Forms approach, and the kind of the idea here is that the tools are there to support you, and the tools are there to kind of help you achieve what you need to achieve. But hopefully the thinking kind of sits across and applies across all of it. So we're a few minutes from the end, and we're going to have a pause so that people can have a quick comfort break. But I'm just going to call on you, Helen, for are there any final reflections you'd like to share before we take a break?
No, just that I thought Claire's story was a really great to hear. I love the idea of the forums. I think that's really powerful. And it was just really great to see the progression from the big data down to some structure as to how you can go thinking about what you can do. But then Claire showed exactly how they've applied all of that in their setting, and the idea of having 10 schools that are all very different. And yes, absolutely agree with Claire that it's people want to work for a school rather than a bigger organization most of the time. But we have found that in some trusts, particularly where some of the schools might be struggling a little bit, sometimes you flip that and the sport of the trust becomes the top line, and the school setting becomes the second. So going back to what Ben said right at the start, tailoring your messages, you really need to think about your audience and what they want to hear, and having the flexibility, but also the confidence to be able to do that and know that what you're saying is right for that particular audience. So yeah, I thought that was really good, a really good example. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Helen. And yeah, as I say, we'll wrap up the session now so we can have a few minutes break. I think this leads really, really neatly into our next session, which my colleague Amanda will be running with our friends from Ted Rad Trust, all about listening to your staff and how to take kind of the voice of your people and turn that into your superpower. So yeah, we'll take a few minutes break, return at just gone past, when Amanda will be leading the next session. Thank you very much, everyone, and thanks, Claire and Helen in particular.